Welcome to Inside the Set with Set Decor. Inside the Set is a series that focuses on the design and decor of stories that excite us and ignite our imaginations, where we get to discuss the collaborations between production designers and set decorators, and hear firsthand accounts of how those works of art came to be, from their inception to ideas on the page, where we sit in the dark and experience them collectively.
Welcome to Inside the Set with Set Decor. I'm Jen Pascal, SDSA, and today I'm pleased to welcome set decorator Shane Vieux and production designer Patrice Vermette. We're going to discuss their collaboration on the really creative images that they've made in Dune Part 2. Welcome, Shane and Patrice.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen.
So Patrice, I want you to set up a little bit and tell us a little bit about the difference between Part 1 and Part 2. Now, you were awarded the Oscar for Dune 1, which was fabulous. And did you go back to some of the same environments?
I think it started on in 2000, was it? Yeah, 21. October 26. I was in Australia, and I got a text message. I wake up one morning and I get like 83 between text message and email. I've got like 83 messages. A lot of them came from Denis, and that's how I learned that Part 2 was greenlit. And obviously, the first phone call I made was to Denis. And we were very excited about that. And the first thing we actually talked about was that we wanted Part 2 to be different from Part 1, but while keeping a visual continuity, because it's the same worlds. But in this movie, we were able to I hate the word attack, but it's like to tackle the world of the Fremen, which we had barely touched in Part 1. Really dig deep in the Harkonnen world of Getty Prime. Discover Kaitan, which is the Imperial planet, and that we had a lot of fun doing that as well. I'll explain why maybe later if you ask me the question. And also that there was a really good opportunity to rethink Arrakeen, and Arrakeen being the capital city of Arrakis. That's where the residency is. Because at the end of Part 1, it had been carpet bombed, so we needed to think about how the Harkonnens, which are now given free reign over the production of spice on Arrakis, how they would reinterpret that city. We were thinking about how a colonial entity would transform a city, and they would, first of all, bring their own culture. And just like a cancer that has some implanted on it, some inflatable structure, black structure, like black tar, black molded plastic structure, on the ziggurat influence and brutalist architecture from Part 1. So we had a lot of fun. There was a lot of challenges, and there were like basically 40% more sets on Part 2 than on Part 1. So it was a much more challenging. Part 1 was challenging, but it was an extra level of challenge for Part 2.
And then Shane, this was your first time working with Patrice, right?
Yeah, I have been stalking him since 2018.
Me too.
Yeah. I cold called him on an email and said that I wanted to meet him at some time. And he goes, well, if you're ever in Montreal, let's have dinner. And I drove 6 hours to go see him one night for dinner. And then I ended up driving home that same night.
My gosh.
It was the beginning of a great friendship. And, it was definitely worth stalking the man. But sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
I would have driven those 6 hours as well.
The funny thing is, like, Shane is from Nova Scotia, And when he emailed me, we spoke the first time. He was in Toronto. I'm in Montreal, Quebec, Ontario, like Toronto, Ontario, Quebec, Montreal. And we said, you know what? Let's meet in Manitoba, which is a restaurant in Montreal, which unfortunately closed, but let's keep it Canadian, which was quite, was a theme to that night.
I love it. So you ended up working in Europe a lot, in Budapest mostly, right?
Yeah.
And Shane, how did you do with the crews there? Were you able to bring any of your key people, or?
You know, what's interesting for me is that I always find that when you work in another country, I always find that you should try and ingratiate yourself into the country first. I don't find a lot of value sometimes in bringing someone with you, because I just find that it can kind of throw the mojo off of the crew. And I was very lucky to be able to get a very, very good crew in Budapest, in Jordan, and Abu Dhabi. It was a blessing that I was able to have such a great crew, and we were able to do some amazing builds for sure.
Wow, that's great. And how did you two decide who was designing what? Because it's so, everything was so, fits together so beautifully.
You know, it's the really great thing about Patrice is he always has an idea, and he'll always let you riff off the idea. And what was challenging for me is how to insert myself into the process and be able to put my mark on that. And the nice thing is that Patrice loves the collaboration. And so you were very able to sort of blend yourself into it. And, you know, Tom, the supervising art director, was very good when we first got there about who was doing what, and with Doug Harlocker about who would build certain things and who would move towards certain things, because as you get in different countries, construction will always do a certain amount of things, and then set deck, and then props, and that changes everywhere you go. So it's always at the beginning of every show, the negotiation of what you're going to do. And Tom was very good about helping us navigate that, because he had done part one and had worked in Budapest many times. So it was it really was a great collaboration.
Oh, that's perfect. And I mean, it's so seamless. The whole thing looks so beautiful. And Patrice, I could see your fingerprints all over this with each place.
Well, thank you. You know how much I like to be involved in the design of not just the rooms, with everything, the props, the set deck elements, and I like to sketch up, limited the SketchUp skills, and then like this, so everybody can riff from that. And I think especially for part two, we had figured out the language in the first movie, and then it was just like to make it evolved, but while still steering things within that world. There's some rules. Once we know what the rules are, then we could be playing within that sandbox. Everything needs to have a reason. That's how Denis also likes to work. It's design for design cannot exist. So it was about creating things that would be logical in that world, or have a deeper meaning towards the culture which it was representing. I had an epiphany at one time in the countryside of Montreal. I saw this field. Denis always wanted to have like a black plastic molded world. And as I was driving, it was a kind of a sunny late afternoon, and there was like a field filled with black septic tanks. The way I remember how the light was hitting those plastic curved, and it was just a bit of dust, and then I became obsessed. It's black, it's molded plastic, and what's inside of septic tanks, it relates to the Arconan.
That was so beautiful, where he's soaking in the tub, and I could see the oil sheen in the liquid. What was that?
The liquid was actually made by Gert Nevzer and his team. One day I'm walking in my office, and he's put like about between 8 and 10 containers with liquids. And some were, you think about spice, or the orange one were discarded. And then the ones that really look
Oh,
like a milk covered oil base, underneath. That's suited so well, and also aesthetically in the environment, it worked so well between the whites and the grays and the blacks. So we showed Denis that liquid. We tested the viscosity of the liquid. At one point, like we went to the special effects, and there was like a bigger bucket of that liquid. So we put our hands in it. Then we put the prosthetics, because Stellan is not that fat. So obviously it's all prosthetics, and we tested the costume in it, how to see how it would react.
That room is absolutely stunning to stand in. It is so beautifully designed and such a great process to see of that thing coming together. I do need to preface that, when I started Dune 2, there was a 274-page lookbook that was done. And, verbatim, that was the show. It was done by the time we started prep on that show. And that's such a great thing to work with because, you have the time to plan and draw and incorporate these things into the environments. And that's a really luxury that Patrice was able to pull off, to his credit.
It's easy to make beautiful imagery with my team of concept artists, but also then it becomes to make these a reality. It's a different thing. There was actually another scene in that room which necessitated the breathing apparatus for the Baron. And I remember Shane and I were discussing about the movement, those two balls that are attached to the, and it was also like the Baron was sitting on a seat, and we were like, but the movement, these needs to be puppeteered. They cannot just like be, like, or hanging and balancing. No, they need to be, you need to feel the weight. So Shane goes to see our key grip, the guy Micheletti, and Guy says, well, let's put them on techno cranes. And it was just like the beginning of like, oh my God, okay, we've created a monster.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But the great thing about that is that breathing apparatus is completely a physical effect.
Yeah.
The movement and all of that was not done in visual effects on any of it. It was all done practically. Yeah. And there was a very amazing prop builder in the UK called Pierre Boana, who took all the things that needed to happen to those two balls. It was always moving. It was always expanding and contracting. There was so much movement and simplicity and beauty in those two balls. And that started with a reference that Patrice had seen at a sound museum exhibit in Montreal. Yeah. And it all started from that, and a speaker that I had at home. It was just a crazy combination, but it was absolutely gorgeous.
Isn't that what's so exciting about our business, is that especially with a project like Dune, your imagination can just explode. You see a septic tank and a set evolves from that, and you have a speaker at home, and then you've made this amazing working living prop that it's just amazing. You never know what is going to trigger something. And even though you have this lookbook to work from, it's sort of a jumping off point, right?
Yes, the guidelines are there, but then, like things can always be better, so that's the thing. It's the starting point. It's a good starting point. Everybody knows, what type of movie we're making, but from there, it's about making it even better. It's like getting into the details. Like the hookah was a beautiful element as well. The pipe that he's smoking, that was an element that took a while to design. Like it talks about the character and also needed to fit into the theme of septic tanks.
And then the thrones also, Shane, were amazing.
The concept designers and Patrice were able to bring together these amazing. They seem very simple, but when you actually break them down, there was such a complexity to the tactability and the build of them to bring them together. And, it was such a very long process, but, it was a very new thinking process for me. because it wasn't about a lot of stuff. It was about the simplicity of the one object that you have to build, what needs to happen to that one piece to make that happen. And there's so many levels to it. But it was such a really good learning curve and such a pleasure.
But it makes so much more of an impact because it is so minimalist that it has to be exactly right. And you really,
Yep.
you really nailed it.
There's nowhere to hide.
Exactly.
It's
There's no
there.
clutter. There's absolutely no clutter. This is another place where I see your fingerprints, Patrice, almost like a geometric shape, not only the color, but the geometry, you know, the arena in the triangle shape. Can you talk a little bit more about how you arrived at all this, you know, the like a cross between brutalist and deco? And
Well, in the book and in the script, the emperor decides to go to Arrakis to see what's going on with the spice production because it's not going very well. Spice production is always being stopped because of this Messiah, this Muad'Dib character, which attacks the harvesters. So the emperor decides to go to Arrakis. So he comes in this spaceship, this chrome spaceship, and in the book and in the screenplay, he needs to bring a tent. It's this giant tent, which is the government. You know, he brings his government in place on Arrakis. So thinking started like, how do you bring a big tent on a spaceship, set it up very fast, and be operational? So I was thinking about having this thing collapsible, and I was thinking about like these Seiko or these wristwatch from the 70s or 80s, but even right now they still exist. But it's all the mechanism of wristwatches and how that thing could be collapsible. So let's say the ship. I know it's not in the movie, but the design, the concept exists. And it's like that ship would drop like a package on the ground, and then it would like with cables, and then it would be hoisted back up, and everything could erect and find, you know, because it's like all linked like a watch. And inside, you know, like just like the structure of a government and an organogram, it's like it's a pyramidal organization. You have the head of the universe, the emperor, who's there, and then you've got all the seatings. It's organized like an organogram. One of the themes of Dune is religion. I decided to have this on top of them. That you would have like this cube, which would be split in two, which would make like four identical smaller cubes, would create two slits, and the light would project. It would create a cross. But since everything is at an angle, it really creates like a cross as a reference to religion. Again, I think everything needs to be to have a meaning or a reason to exist.
Patrice had an amazing painter, Serge, who the metallicness of that floor was absolutely to die for. Like, it was so perfect, and it's such a hard thing to do. And he really did such a beautiful job with that. And as you said earlier, it's seamless. It's so beautiful.
it really is. And you can see at the edges how it's the interlocking. So it was the piece where it would have connected.
Serge is our secret weapon. I know you know Serge, Jan. You worked with him in Spiderwick Chronicles. He's a genius at painting. And there's something we've got going with our cinematographer. When we do pre-light, Serge is always there. He bought a cheap Alexa camera at like $5,000. Having the pre-lights a week or 2 weeks sometimes before, then all the lights would be there. All the lights would be balanced and stuff, and then we would just need a spark to operate the board during the week, and then he would show up, and then the painters would finish the set.
Oh,
And we could do the highlights. We could do a bit darker, and that's because we knew how the camera would see it, under which light condition it would be shot in. So that's a huge advantage. It's not that expensive. It's not that much of a luxury because the sets need to be pre-lit anyhow.
Yeah.
No, the only extra expense is having, the spark operating the board. Besides that, it's there,
We're forced to imagine what it would look like. I mean, and because of experience, we've all done enough sets that you can imagine, but to actually do it was a brilliant idea. I want to talk a little bit about, because there's such a beautiful, intimate scene, Shane, with Paul and Shani in their tent. It's like, it's embracing them as they embrace. And I would love to hear more about how you arrived at that, and what did they have with them, and how was that to work out with them, and how did you get Greg in there? PT.
I will say that the construction of that tent almost killed me because if you look at the shapes going on in there, none of these really occur in nature. These are shapes that all fight against each other. And, Patrice really wanted an organicness to that tent. And if you actually look at the cutouts and stuff, that fabric is a 5-layer process. And I work with this group of women in New Zealand called the Textile Collective. They're a group of 12 women that develop fabrics. So you give them the parameters of the fabric that you're looking for, and they will go through and develop the process for you. So we went through at least 12 different incarnations of that fabric, just for the laser cutout, from leather to cork to different types of vinyl. And then we would discuss it with Patrice. And then that framing was a metal framing. And originally I thought that it was a fabric that was going to go flat over it. But Patrice was insistent on having the fabric be concave. And in order to do that, there was an extra layer of hardening agents that had to go on to get into that shape. And they were all, each piece was laser cut. Each piece was done precisely on computer. And we had an amazing set of 3D modelers and leather workers in Budapest that were able to lay that whole process out. It was such a complicated process that took almost 5 or 6 months to do from start to finish. And getting the tobacco to be the perfect shape, and from the laser cut, you would have a silk screen of over a piece of silk to get additional texture so that it wasn't just a solid tobacco color. Then you'd have that fused, then you'd have an acetate over that, and then you'd have a hardening agent on top of that to give it its shape. And it was such a beautiful process in the end, but oh my God, it was endless. I think I cried one day after Patrice came in. And what's great about Patrice is he'll come in and just drop it on you and then just casually walk away. It's like something that's so normal to ask for. And then he'll just say, okay, and then he'll walk away. God bless him for pushing the envelope on it, because the tent was absolutely gorgeous to build. And it was a beautiful thing in the end. And it was done in 3 sections. And that was the other thing, is like having Greg to be able to light it and be able to get enough light in to actually make that shootable. And that was a long process too, to get the light to be able to get the level that we could build with that thing and not making it too dark. But I wish there were more scenes in there, but it was absolute perfection, because it was supposed to be an organic material. It it had a bit of a worm skin content to it, and it was gorgeous.
It was. I mean, knowing there's so many layers involved, I don't know how you were still able to have it be transmitting the light, because it just glowed so beautifully. Warm texture for those warm, wonderful scenes with the two of them.
So many samples and so many things to do. I mean, we'll show you something a little bit later, but there was some Pinks fabric that was in the desert, which we built the shelters with. And we modeled that after the old Inuit jackets, the seal skin that came through, but it was supposed to be a worm skin. You know, I would grab a stone in the desert in Jordan and ship that to New Zealand so that the women could build that color to match that fabric. Wow. And when you actually put those fabrics in the shelters in the desert, they blend seamlessly. And the one beautiful thing about, well, many beautiful things, but there's a monochromaticness to this show that is so gorgeous to see. You know, there is so much set deck and stuff in there, but you don't see it because it blends away. But trust me, it's there. And there's such a beauty in monochromatic. And I think we worked with like 3 different colors on that show. You know, there was not a big palette. But trying to make those things perfect and fit the environments is a real challenge to do. But it was done.
Absolutely. I mean, really was seamless, but you really did have to go in and say, okay, I see things that set deck brought.
Yeah, it's there.
Yeah, it's just incredible. Patrice, I want to talk a little bit about the arena.
Yeah.
That was such a creepy scene. I mean, the whole thing is amazing, but I love the shape of it and the black and white, like you were saying, all the monochrome of everything else. You suddenly are in this black and white environment.
All the elements, because there's a couple of sets within that arena scene. Obviously, right now we see the Bene Gesserit box. There's also the Baron's box. There's also the gladiator room where Fade gets dressed. There is the prison where the Atreides soldier is taken from. But the black and white infrared aspect of it was something that Denis and Greg came up with. Greg and Denis wanted to shoot it black and white. He wanted a world in which the black sun of Getty Prime sucks up all the colors. And Greg suggested maybe like using black and white, but infrared, which created, fortunately not for us, but for other as a department like Don Moat and Jacqueline West, it affected them. Our materials with the set building did not change color, either inside or outside. When they were using that camera, it remained the same, but in black and white. Jacqueline, her fabric, she worked so hard because some black fabric would turn white. And some of the fabric she needed to change, but some of it we embraced the fact that they changed, like Lady Fenring's fabric when she's walking into the Bene Gesserit box, just at the transition that it becomes white, just like his like the Baron's as well. It was black. And I would love to tell you that we understand now what happened because we tested them inside, outside, under the sun. We still don't know to this day how.
But it works beautifully.
But it works. That's the cinema god in action.
Yes.
The other thing that was very, very strange is that Donald had, like actors, sometimes actors, they have tattoos.
Yeah.
On their arms and on their neck, and you need to hide them. So in normal circumstances, it's quite easy with good makeup to hide them. But infrared camera, you could see the tattoos.
Oh no!
So that created a lot of headaches. Yeah.
But
But
yeah,
for us, but this scene, you know, like we had the models, we did the model in 3D, but all of that when they're on the when they're in the arena, they're fighting in between two sound stages in Budapest, and we created like gray screens around, and the ground is like white sand, and the other sets, the Baron's box and the Bene Gesserit box are on stage at Hong Expo. And actually, that one is the same set that we just changed a few elements for budgetary reasons. And the gladiator room and the cell are and the corridor are on stage. Yeah, that was a lot of R&D because of the way that Greg and Denny decided to the technical aspect of it.
yeah, it's there's sometimes when you're in black and white, you can test it. You know, I've done it where we've tested through the noir filter on the iPhone, but this
Uh-huh.
with infrared,
No, because it's infrared.
yeah.
No, actually, it's in front. There's no like. I'm sure that but yeah, we were in learning in trial and error territory. There's another scene that has a different color, which is the eclipse scene at the beginning of the movie. There's
Uh-huh.
an eclipse and it's all red.
Right.
But that was Denis. Yeah, that scene. That was actually when we shut down at one of the day. There was a real eclipse. Again, the cinema gods. Crazy enough, it's 12 different locations.
No.
Some in Jordan, and some in some on stage in the back lot, and some in Abu Dhabi. But the reason why it's red and why we decided to have an eclipse, it was Denis' suggestion because 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 it was supposed to be at night at the beginning. The attack should be at night. And then we were created like shadows, and then it was, should we do day for night? Should try to find a location all the time in shadow? But then then Denis said, no, there's an eclipse. And that's
Oh.
the magic. You know, that's Denis' brilliant mind going. So that gives an identity to that scene. But it's enhanced, obviously, but it's in the movie. When we see the sun, it's the eclipse.
So beautiful. Shane, did you have a huge crew?
You know, in Budapest, we had upwards of anywhere between 45 to 60, depending. And in Jordan, it was probably about 24. And I would probably say about 20 people in Abu Dhabi. Yeah. And again, in Budapest, it was all like the molding department was just absolutely brilliant. They did a great job.
And I know that Patrice would help me. Was it in the Fremen Palace where you had the frieze on the wall?
The Fremen, part of their culture, because they're in survival mode, not only because they're attacked by the whatever family is given, you know, the spice exploitation by the emperor, whether they're Harkonnens or the ones that were before the Harkonnens taking care of stealing the resources. They're also, because of the extreme condition of the weather, the winds, and the sand, they need to. They're in survival mode, and they need to write, you know, their story, just like some Egyptians, let's say, used to do. So it's like it's all the hieroglyph. It's their story, and then you take it to another step when you understand in the cistern of soul, you know, the big the big pool of water that collects all the waters from their deads. And I don't know how many liters and liters and liters that are in there, but you see the weight, and they don't touch it. They would prefer, you know, in the script, they would prefer to die of thirst than to touching it because it's part of the bigger scheme, the bigger dream of having a green planet. So yeah, so all the writing on the walls or in Siege the Bar are they're very present. But then there's another way of that I suggested to have the writing on the wall for the Fremens is when they after the attack the attack of Siege Tabar by the Harkonnens. They retreat to an area which is the Cave of Birds, and it's basically the inspiration for that one was like a bone harmonica, but the walls are all fingerprints. It's like fingerprints being an identity, it's unique. So in my mind, I'm thinking that, if their culture eventually ceased to exist, well, archaeologists of like another 1,000 years would find, like remains of ruins of their civilization, and that's a way for the Fremen to scream that they existed, or they exist, and they existed if they ever disappear. So
Their story remains.
their stories are there on the walls. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. There was another set actually we had a lot of fun with, was the Maker's Temple. I don't know if you got the images of that, but that's in the Fremen world. It's the two pools. There's a pool of sand and there's a pool of water. And in the pool of sand, that's where the baby worm is, and that's
Yeah.
The maker takes that the small worm, puts it in water, drowns and extracts the poison from the worm. And it was the idea behind that set is like it's made in the figure of 8. So life, water, death, the sand. When Paul Atreides is caught between life and death, they set him right in between the two worlds.
It was almost like an amphitheater.
Yeah.
Right?
So the Fremens are like, again, always between life and death. They're like fighting for their survival. They're like, they wanna scream that they exist, and be respected.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think there'll be more of them to come in the future.
Oh, no.
So I want to talk a little bit also about technology, because you went from all these wonderful natural organic shapes, and then you go into spacecraft.
Yep.
Which is the hard facts and the way of transport. And Shane, I know that we've all had the nightmares of creating the interiors of spacecraft, but you're in a special world, so it makes it even more interesting.
The wonderful thing about this world is that everything we do, for the most part, is pneumatic and has motion. And what was really great, you'll notice from the thumper to, even the hookah, it's all got an element of movement to them, and the moving balls and stuff like that. And even when you look at Arulin's office, it's a really great way to sort of look at technology with her recording device. So simple, yet it's just really beautiful to watch. It's pneumatic, simple, and it has a really great flow. And that was prevalent through the whole movie, from the ships to everywhere you went. You just take it down to the most basic element, and that's really what it was.
And the ships, they're all inspired by insects as well, as part of the book has an ecological aspect of it, and the ships are also mechanical. There's no computer, there's no thinking machine in the world of Dune. So everything is, again, mechanical, very simple, very there is some tech, but it's quite limited. We wanted to embrace, like, again, the insectoid aspect of it, and not pay too much attention to the technology. Keep it believability of them being able to fly, not make him like too much in the fantasy world. Our Conan Harvest are designed by George Hall. These are like ticks. The inspiration is ticks that suck up the blood, so they suck up the natural resources of Arrakis.
there's no stretch of the imagination in any of these machines. They all work in the way that you would think that they would work. And it's such a great thing to see.
And the ornithopters are like dragonflies, right?
The dragonflies, but also the Raban's ornithopter was inspired by a bee, by a bumblebee. Everything technically, well, again, it has to have a meaning or have like some sort of being anchored into a reality. For the worlds, like Arrakis, like we see Arrakeen right now. That's why also everything's at an angle, you know, so the wind would sweep over the buildings and not because the wind on Arrakis goes at 880 kilometers an hour, so you would never build anything straight, right? So that's why everything's at an angle. The city has been built in a rock basin. It's because if you build a city in the open desert, then you know the sandworms would attack anybody who's starting to build anything there because it creates vibration. So again, everything is there for a reason. At the beginning of the movie, the Irulan's office, it's not a set built, and we shot that at the Brion Cemetery in Italy. It's Carlo Scarpa, an architect, a Venetian architect who had designed and built it, finished. He actually never saw it finished because he died in 1978 in Japan. He actually hit his head falling from a step ladder. He hit his head on concrete, on cement, which was his material of predilection when he was working, metal and cement. And Carlos Scarpa it's yeah, exactly this scene, and the gardens there are in the Tomba Brion. And when we started working on the movie, and we knew we were going to be based in Budapest, we needed to find a location which was close to Budapest, well, close enough. And I suggested to Denis working there because Carlos Scarpa, his influence on me is major, and it's also it's major on part one, and it made sense to set up. Caton again is the home of the emperor, and I was thinking like the imperial planet, like in any empire, that empire, the home of that empire dictates the aesthetics of the rest of the world. Just like the Romans, you know, and everywhere they conquered, there was a Roman influence. You know, the Turks, the same thing. The American empire has an influence on the rest of the world. So I said, it would be great to set up Caton in that aesthetics, that the purest form of the aesthetics is Carlos Scarpa. So we actually started in pre-shoots working there, and it's actually the first time I cried visiting a location. It was fabulous. It was the attention to details, even though it looks like super rough because it's made out of concrete and metal. It's incredible. Like you should go visit that. It's
That's amazing. It really sounds amazing, and I see the influence of you in your work.
Yeah,
you know, circles and shapes. And
so we went to see where the master is. We paid tribute to the master.
it's good to have the opportunity to go visit.
You know what's amazing is that because even though that the Brion family, they were people who had electronic company called Vega in Europe, but even though like he was not part of the family, he was work for hired. He was actually buried just outside of the cemetery, and designers and architect, when you go there, you need to take your pen and leave it on the tomb. So it's a beautiful sight as well, just to see like the amount of pens and it's beautiful.
Was that office where she was sitting? Was that
Yes.
existing?
Yes.
Oh my God, Shane, that's a gift from the set dressing gods.
No.
Oh no, the furniture. No, the furniture. No, the
Shane.
furniture was Italian inspired, but we built all that, and you know,
that was exquisite.
it was leather inlay. pounded metal, hand-painted gold leaf. Yeah, the boys did a very, very beautiful job designing and building that furniture.
Kudos to Shane because he's the one. Like I wanted to shoot there, like Denis wanted to shoot there, but then it's like, okay, now we need to have special furniture, like imperial furniture that needs to suit that environment. And I remember when Shane came into my office as Patrice. Here's what I think, and I was like, oh my god, yes, and yes.
Yeah, the Brion Cemetery should be one of the 7 wonders of the world because it is heaven when you walk through there. It's very, very small, but again, the attention to detail. I mean, just rainwater would corral in these little troughs, and just to open a gate, there'd be a little latch that pulls up from the floor. Like everything was extremely thought out in that place, and it really is very small, but it is one of the most beautifully designed places in the world that I've ever been to. And it's a cemetery, a private cemetery.
Incredible.
And the crew were spectacular. Like everybody was just so respectful of that place because it had never been shot.
Oh my God.
And actually, Denis had asked me to write the letter in front of the first day of shoot, like a title, like the front page of the call sheet. And I explained why that area was special, and everybody like were so respectful of that place, and the owners of the cemetery were very happy about the crew. Yeah, no, it's a gift. It's a special place.
And that sort of environment comes from the top as well. It's from Denis and you and Greg and all the people who respect one another.
Yeah.
And carry that through, and Mary Parent and the producer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Really,
absolutely.
It's such a great environment, doesn't it?
They allow us to go there, to dream, and
Exactly.
to be at the top of our game.
Exactly. And you are, both of you. Now, I want to know, is there anything that we didn't cover? I have gone through. I mean, you could talk about this movie for days.
How long do you have?
What else would you like to talk about that I haven't queried you about?
I mean, from my perspective, honestly, the interior tent is the big one. Arulin's office is a big one. There was an enormous volume of fabric done on that show. I just have to say that for all stuff that you didn't see, we built these amazing cushions that went in the assembly, like over 200 that you never saw. Beautiful carpets that went down on the floors. But if you look closely, you can see a lot of it, but it actually goes away. But they were very, very beautiful. And I've got to say that it was really one of the best experiences for me because of what we're able to build.
That's so great, isn't it, to have that challenge, to fit into an environment that sort of has been established, but yet you're expanding into new turf. And you have to follow the guidelines, but you can also, it explodes your creativity of how you can fit in, right?
Being the new guy can be very overwhelming when I think there were only maybe 2 or 3 department heads that changed from 1 to 2. So you definitely spend a lot of time trying to get up to speed of what the language is. And everyone was very ingratiating to help me figure that out. But, once you sort of get into it, it's just such a great world to be in.
And Denis always makes the set such a beautiful place.
Yeah,
he is
such a great human being.
He is definitely the maestro. He definitely creates an amazing work environment, and everyone that works for him, he's a model of what you should be.
Yes.
He gets the best out of everyone, and he's so gracious about it. It's a science, and it's a gift that you don't see very much in this business. So it was lovely to witness.
We all pinch ourselves every day, like, okay, we're in his band.
Yeah, exactly.
His band. We're
Exactly.
lucky. We're very privileged because he allows everybody to dream and again to be creative and to suggest things and to
I
yeah.
used to love to watch the two of you. You get one of you would get an idea, and then the other one
I know
would.
exactly. It's like that. It's like we bounce from each other and the whole team, you know, like Greg and Gerd and Paul Lambert and the whole team. It's like that. It's just like we're like basically when we were on the set with Denis, I'm a 7-year-old kid. Jan, I know I can be a 7-year-old kid, but and it's like we're all playing together. It's like we're having fun doing this. You know, it's not where nobody's miserable. You know, it's like and Jacqueline and Donald and it's fun. We're amongst family. The best moments is when okay, all these worlds. You know, there's illustration, there's models and stuff, and when we are called for methodology meeting and we're all sitting at a very long table, all the heads of departments are there and we are being distributed, you know, like Denis comes out of the office with Sam and Sam Udeki, the storyboard artist, and they distribute the storyboards because we all read the scenes, we all know where the scenes are going to take place. But now it's like Denis' extreme magic and extreme talent, and we're like, holy crap! How the hell are we gonna do this? And then it's everybody's putting their ego aside, and we're allowed to. Those are magical because we're allowed to say anything that comes out of our mind without being judged, even though it could be a stupid idea. Because that stupid idea, someone can bounce from it and have a great idea. And that's how to solve, you know, the issues and the technical issues. And it's never within that team. It's never a question about, well, let's do something else instead, or let's design another type of set because it's too difficult. It's like we don't know how to do this. It's like no. It's everybody's putting their heads together to make sure that that's what we give him because Denis creates that type of environment to work in. Nobody wants to disappoint Denis because we all love Denis. We all give our 100%, you know, if 1,000%, you know.
I'm gonna embarrass Patrice for 1 second and say there's some production notes, and from Denis, Patrice Vermette happens to be one of the most talented humans I've ever met. And I agree with that. Shane, you are right there, my friend.
Thank you, Jan. I appreciate that. And thank you for doing this today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. You put us at ease, Jan. It's like we're friends, we're family, so it's good.
Family, exactly. Thank you, Shane View and Patrice Vermette, for joining us on Inside the Set with Set Decor to speak about your absolutely phenomenal work on Dune Part 2. Thank you so much. I'm Jen Pascal, SDSA, and I could not be more proud to have been in this conversation with the two of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Inside the Set with Set Decor. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website, setdecor.com.